Before I start the video, I would like to give a massive shout out to my Patreons who have been supporting my channel. If you would like to check out my Patreon and receive early access to some very exciting videos coming soon, then please click the link in the description below. Hello everyone, and welcome to the new episode of Just a Nerd podcast. And today I am joined by the lovely Ellie Littlechild. Hello, Ellie.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's a delight to have you on here. So if you'd just like to introduce yourself to the audience and tell us
Yeah,
a little bit about yourself.
yeah. So my name is Ellie, and I am one of the main presenters over on WhoCulture on YouTube, amongst other WhatCulture channels. But I guess for the purposes of your audience, WhoCulture is where you are most likely to know me from. And we cover a wide variety of Doctor Who content, lots of lists, lots of discussions, rankings, all the different Doctor Who content.
So if you have been living under a rock and have not heard of WhoCulture, be sure to check them out. Because yeah, as Ellie said, they do a variety of Doctor Who stuff such as news, discussions, etc. So yeah, be sure to check them out. But okay, we've done a little bit of an introduction here. So let's talk about yourself because I assume that you're a fan of Doctor Who.
That would be a good assumption.
A good assumption, yeah. So let's talk about your history of being a fan. When was the first time you were introduced to the show?
So I always thought I just watched it when it first came back on air in 2005 from the very beginning. And that's what I always told everybody until my mum informed me quite recently that you didn't watch it when it first came on. You were way too scared to watch it when it first came on. So I would imagine that I probably maybe first started watching it from the Christmas Invasion. I
Oh,
remember watching that one. So I think maybe what happened is I watched that one and then maybe went back as far as I mean, in my mind, I can't remember not watching it. It's like a British staple, isn't it? You
yeah,
watch it when Doctor Who's on, everyone watches it.
especially at Christmas as well.
Yeah.
It's certainly used to be a part of Christmas TV schedules. It was all over the place on terms of like TV guides and stuff. I remember quite well.
I think at one point before, iPlayer and Netflix and all these things were massive, I do think we did get them on Love Film, which I think is what turned into Netflix in the end. But it was
Yeah.
a bit like a cross between Blockbuster Video and Netflix, where you would subscribe and then choose what you wanted, and they'd send you the discs in the post. And I think at some point we did do that with Doctor Who. So maybe that's when we went back to the beginning and did it from the very beginning of Christopher Eccleston's run anyway. But I do remember
Yeah.
doing that.
For me, it was I do remember watching the first episode the with Rose. I was 4 when that first aired. It's a very long time ago, but I remember I certainly didn't watch all the episodes weekly. I think I watched them like in and out. And then I remember being really, really confused when Christopher Eccleston decided to, as I used to say, burst into flames and then transform into another guy.
Yeah, I
Um,
guess if you aren't familiar with Doctor Who, that is a very strange thing to suddenly happen.
and that's like something as well that I'll be mentioning later on. And there's some audience questions that go into this, but when I was young, obviously I didn't like keep up to date with news in general, so I was completely thrown off guard when okay, the Daleks came back, and then Christopher Eccleston just suddenly transforms into David Tennant. Like, what's this about? Like, I
Mm.
was just completely thrown off guard. But anyway, I'm going off on a tangent. Yeah, you mentioned one of the ways you got access to rewatching, or in your case, watching Christopher Eccleston series for the first time was through Love Film and stuff. Um, what did you think about the DVD releases back then? Because obviously they didn't just do the box sets; they had volumes as well. So they released them
Yeah, they
like
did have volumes. I mean, I've never been someone that's been too fussed about getting the physical media necessarily.
yeah,
But it definitely was released. I mean, I think we maybe got 3 episodes per disc, as far as I remember. I mean, we're going back quite a while now. I don't really remember, and I wasn't the one that dealt with it. I was just told to sit down and we watch it. But Yeah, I think it was released kind of 3 or 4 episodes per disc, and then you'd watch those, and then you'd have to send it back and then wait for the next disc to come.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, in terms of actually getting the physical media, I have got a few now. But generally speaking, it wasn't really something that we did much. Maybe because we were bordering on that time where streaming did start to become more of a thing.
Yeah.
I don't remember iPlayer being a thing when I was younger. I don't know when iPlayer actually first became
I think
a
the
thing,
earliest
but
memory I have of iPlayer was one of Matt Smith's earlier seasons, because I remember I missed, I think it was The Beast Below, but back then they didn't release the episode straight away on iPlayer. I had to wait like
yeah,
two or
you'd
three
you'd have to
hours.
wait, or we used to be able to get it on like +1. So if you missed it, you could watch it an hour later. But if you missed it then, well, then you just have to wait until suddenly it would be put on randomly in the middle of a Sunday afternoon or something.
Yeah, it's a bit of like hat luck, unfortunately. So
Or
yeah,
make sure
go.
you press record.
Yeah,
If you
yeah,
didn't record
exactly.
it, nah, wow, you missed it.
Yeah, I remember with one of the old Skyboxes, I could only record like one program per time. So when I
Hmm.
re-recorded something else, it would just wipe it,
Yeah.
which certainly was frustrating back then.
Hmm.
But thankfully, technology's evolved, and yeah, we have a little bit more freedom on how we view stuff, including Doctor Who. But anyway, let's go back onto the history of you being a fan. So your first episode that you remember was the Christmas Invasion. Was that
Mm.
after that point? Were you immediately hooked, or did it take a little
As
bit
far as
longer?
I remember, do you know, it's one of those things. I've spoken about this with the WhoCulture team before, because it's such a big part of our lives now.
Yeah,
It's kind of hard to remember an episode and whether it's the first time you actually ever watched it, or because I've watched them so many times, it's very hard to pinpoint, is that the first time I ever watched it, or is that just one of the many rewatches I've done of it? But I do remember that actually it was my brother who was really into it to start with. And I think I did enjoy it, but it was, yeah, my brother who was really into it. And we did go to, there was like a pop-up exhibition in London. I remember going to that, but it was, for my brother's birthday and I went. But now the tables have very much turned, and I I am the one who's really into it, as opposed to he. But yeah, I think it's something that we've always enjoyed.
yeah,
It just kind of evolved, I think, over time. I think maybe as I got older and started to appreciate it, not just for what it was as a sci-fi exciting thing, but also from the perspective of filmmaking or television making and
yeah.
acting and all the other elements of it as well. I think as I got older, I started to appreciate more than just what it was at face value.
Yeah, that's very interesting that you mentioned about how Doctor Who's always had like a presence in your family, especially with the new iteration. Um, is that something that still continues to be an element, or have you been like the sole carrier of being a Whovian?
I
Or
think now more so it's only me that's really that interested. I think once I know we definitely used to watch it like religiously when it was David Tennant. I think
yeah,
when Matt Smith took over, like everybody else in the country, there was a little bit of skepticism.
yeah,
But he really grew on me. But I think from kind of there onwards, my family mostly kind of decided that maybe they weren't as keen on it as much. But certainly with the newer stuff, they haven't watched,
yeah.
unless I forced them to. When the Power of the Doctor came on, obviously I had to watch that and then record our ups and downs immediately after. So I was like, there is no choice here. We have to watch it. I have to watch it, so you have to watch it.
Yeah, it's kind of a similar thing with me. Like when David Tennant was the Doctor, I mean, I had countless family members that were watching it. No, not just my mom and dad, but like, uncles and aunties and my grandparents did. And in my case, not straight away with Matt Smith, but kind of as time went on. And I think as well, unfortunately, when the 50th anniversary happened, there wasn't that buzz. And same with people that I went to school with as well. Which is unfortunate, but uh, yeah, it is interesting though to learn in quite a few cases that Doctor Who has such a big place in like families and stuff, and for some people as well, they grew up with classic Doctors and stuff like that. It's always fun hearing about like my mom and dad always bring up that they grew up watching, I don't know, Tom Baker or Sylvester McCoy. And that led me to believe that after I first watched series one of the revival, I was like, yeah, I really want to get this on DVD. But I was pestering my dad for the series with Tom Baker because I believed that Christopher Eccleston was Tom Baker, which led to me getting Genesis of the Daleks instead of series one. But still, it was a banger of an episode, and that was my introduction to Classic Who. What was your first forte into Classic Who, if you don't mind me
Classics.
asking?
Yeah, I haven't. Don't kill me. I haven't seen all of the classic era. It is on my list, but
Yeah.
at the moment I'm also having to get through all of Star Trek, which
Oh,
kind of had to take priority through work. So
yeah, that's fair enough.
But again, my mum is of the same generation of the Tom Baker era, so I definitely heard mostly about his era of the show. I think
Yeah.
an episode that I find that I really enjoy is School Reunion, because it has that connection. It's that first connection between the modern and the classic era.
Yeah.
And I think that's where I was kind of like, oh, this is someone who's really important to the show, and I don't know why. And now I'm interested to find out why. But there's clearly something here.
Yeah.
And then obviously as time goes on and you get to see those classic doctors popping up in cameos and things like that. But it is definitely something I need to do, to go back and watch right from the very, very beginning. I mean, I've seen lots of snippets, obviously through work as well. Sometimes I'll be like, I need to watch this scene so I can familiarize myself with what's going on in this article that I'm talking about. So, I tend to, if I'm talking about something really specific that I'm not too sure about, I'll make sure I go and watch it first. Otherwise, you'll all be able to tell that I'm faking it.
No, that's fair enough. I mean, I know a lot of people that haven't dived too deep into Classic Who. I mean, I'd be a hypocrite by saying that I have. I certainly haven't. I'd say since The Power of the Doctor, I've dived a little bit in more, but I feel like I've relied on episodes that have existing monsters or characters that I'm
Yeah.
familiar of from the modern series, because I feel like if I just dived into the 9-part story, the War Games, as like my first journey into Classic Who, I'd probably be a bit like, I guess intimidated a little bit, because some episodes in the classic run are, they've aged really well, whereas some where they're like 9-part stories, and then you just like scratching your head at the end and feeling a bit exhausted.
Mm.
Yeah, some unfortunately haven't stood the test of time, sadly. To just be respectful there. But anyway, let's talk about how the show has had an impact on your life, because I'm assuming it's had somewhat of an impact, considering, you've joined WhoCulture.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as I said, I've been a fan of it for a long time, and I used to talk about it a lot. And as most people, kind of kids watch it and then kind of grow out of it, whereas I never really grew out of it. And I've been very fortunate that I've somehow managed to build a career, build a job out of being a fan of something, which I think most people can only dream of. So it really is amazing to be a fan of something and be able to talk about it, write about it, discuss it for a living.
Yeah, that's like the perfect scenario to be in. The only other one would be to actually be in the show itself, because
Yeah.
that's the thing I've always liked about, fans of the show, even fans like David Tennant, who, grew up watching the show and then he ended up being the Doctor. I guess us nerds, there is a reward in the long run for our, undying loyalty to being part of a sci-fi fandom. You never know how it could turn out.
Mm.
But yeah, it's really cool to hear about, how your love for the show, you ended up joining WhoCulture. And I imagine that's, from the moment you joined WhoCulture, I imagine that was such like a rewarding feeling.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't start out at the capacity that I am now. When I
Yeah.
first joined, it was very much a we'll give you work as and when we have it.
Yeah.
I didn't do very much work for them, but I think that, I mean, obviously I had to apply for the
Yeah.
job, and I think they could see through other stuff that I'd done that I kind of had experience in terms of I was a fan, but I also had elements of experience of performance and training in the other areas that are important to the job as well. I think a lot of people assume that anyone who's a fan can just do do the job we do, but actually
Yeah.
there's, yes, being a fan of what you're talking about is very, very important. But there's also the part where you have to, you have to have some sort of presence and understanding of not just what you see on the screen, but how it's made and all the other elements that go into it as well. Which I think some people go, well, that's not a job until you explain what else goes into it.
Well, it certainly is, because you you've got to, like, as you say, have a presence on screen. You've got to speak in like a natural way instead of just, I don't know, reading off notes off your phone, being like like robotic. You've got to speak with passion, which is easier. Well, it's not. I feel like I messed that up. It's harder than it is. Because you've got to put a lot of energy into it. And from what I can tell from the videos I've watched, you and the other hosts certainly do speak with passion. So it is lovely to watch, even like whilst I'm doing other activities and stuff like that. I'm never like switched off. And as you said, it's not an easy thing to do. It does take a lot of practice. But that does lead on to my next segment here as well. So you've spoken a little bit about your history of WhoCulture, how you applied and stuff, and you got the job and you started off in like a smaller capacity. What was it like recording your first video for them?
Honestly, it was very difficult. So I had to do an audition tape. It was called a sample tape, but to get the job in the first place, after they'd kind of read my CV and my cover letter, the next stage was, can you record a sample for us? And they sent me an article and they said, can you record the first page and then like the first 2 or 3 entries? And as at this point, only really having experience acting wise, I just memorized these 3 pages of dialogue, if you like, which is very difficult. But obviously, as an actor, you kind of get used to memorizing lots and lots of words. And so I did. I memorized it and I sent it. And I think they were very impressed with that because I'd memorized it pretty much word for word. So the first video I ever did was the same article I'd done for my sample tape. But at this stage, I hadn't really got my swing of how I was going to do it.
Yeah.
And now I'm very much in the flow and I have my methods of how I memorize things. If I memorize things, I learned very quickly that I didn't have to stick to it word for word, and I was allowed to put my own opinions in there if I didn't agree with what the article said. But my very first one, I didn't want to go against what it said in front of me. Usually acting wise, you stick to the script unless you're told otherwise. And I didn't want to do the writer of the article an injustice by not saying exactly what they had written. And so it took me a long time to memorize everything. The video that I ended up sending them was ridiculously long, and they were like, okay, cool, thank you. We'll have to work on getting that shorter in the future. And I was like, okay, I don't know how I'm going to do that, but okay. So it was very daunting and quite scary. And obviously presenting wise, I hadn't done a lot of it before. Well, I hadn't done any presenting before. So if you were to go back and watch my very first video now, I mean, it's very slow. The pace is very slow and it's very kind of, I guess, maybe robotic. I don't know. But over time, I kind of developed my own skills and my own little ways of memorizing and things like that. So,
well, there's this saying, practice makes perfect. And obviously,
exactly.
As you've shown, you've got the swing of things and, you've added your own personality to the videos that you do. And that's something as well I wanted to talk about here as well. So obviously, you've mentioned that you've done some acting, and obviously, this is your first presenting role as well. What advice would you give to upcoming video presenters and actors?
See, when you sent me these questions the other day, and I looked at that one, I thought, that's so strange because I don't see myself as someone that's in a position to be giving out advice, especially acting-wise. I mean, I've not done a lot of acting. I came straight from uni. I graduated 2019, and then within 6 months, COVID happened and the world shut down. And so, I haven't really done much, and I was just very fortunate to get this job on the tail end of COVID. And even then, it was very, like I said, a very small capacity. And then I asked them for it to be on a wider capacity. And only recently have I joined them like full time as an employee as opposed to a freelancer. But I would say for me, the biggest thing is to not compare yourself to other people. I spent a lot of time watching Sean, for example, and thinking he's so confident, and I don't feel like I come across like that. And obviously he'd been doing it for a while, and his personality came through, and I wasn't sure how to mirror that. And in the end, I was like, people are watching you for your opinions, so just be yourself. Put across your strong thoughts on certain characters, and some people are going to love it and some people are going to hate it, but that's life. So just be yourself. They want you because you're you, not because you're trying to be someone else. And I guess that's the case in acting as well. You know, if you're doing an audition or whatever, just try very hard not to compare yourself to other people. If you're right for the role, they'll want you because you are who you are, as opposed to being the same as the other people in the room. Just embrace your individuality. And I think that's something that throughout my kind of teenage years, as someone who still very much enjoyed something like Doctor Who and was maybe a bit ashamed of that, and as I got slightly older and went to uni and stuff, I just started to embrace it and was like, you know what, if I like Doctor Who, and if you think that makes me childish or a nerd, I actually don't care at this point. At school, I tried very hard to be like, I'm cool, I'm not a nerd or whatever, and actually I got to a point where I was like, this is me. So take me as I am. I'm a nerd, and it's worked out well for me in the long run because I'm now in a job that ticks pretty much all the boxes of what I aspired to do. So
yeah, exactly. And as we mentioned earlier, you know, you're passionate about the subject as well, which certainly does, well, I assume anyway, it makes your job easier as well, because it's like, you know, it's not like it's becoming a chore or anything like that. You know, it's like, okay, I've woken up today. What am I going to do? I'm going to talk about Doctor Who. You know, it's always good to, again, be passionate about a subject as well. Which, again, as I've mentioned earlier, I can certainly tell, not just from the videos, but obviously the way you talk about how Doctor Who has had like a presence in your life, which is always lovely to hear people talk about. But speaking of passion for Doctor Who, obviously you've mentioned that, you know, it's had a presence in your life for a while, which, you know, I imagine, you know, you've had various favorite moments and very iconic moments that probably stuck in your head. What's your favorite Doctor Who episode and why?
I find this such a hard question to answer because it does vary, but I would say that up there very high is Silence in the Library and Forest of the Dead two-part story. Technically, that's two episodes. Well, it is and it isn't.
Okay.
It is because it is the introduction we get of that character, and as anyone will be aware, I love that character quite a bit. But I also think that series 4 is, for me, like peak Doctor Who. I think I love the dynamic between David Tennant and Catherine Tate. I think the idea of the Vashta Nerada is a really interesting concept. I like the setting. Everything about that episode really works for me. And beyond the fact that it's River Song, I really enjoyed having this character introduced who had the upper hand on the Doctor, which you don't see very often. And seeing that them play against each other, and him not being the smartest person in the room for a change, and how that changed, and also wanting to know, as he does, who is this character and how does she know so much about him? And obviously we didn't know at the time that we would find that out later on. But even if that was all we had of the character, I just really liked how it changed the Doctor and the dynamic of who he is, and I just thought it was very interesting and clever storyline.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I've recently rewatched those episodes recently, and it hits more knowing obviously River's story and how it went on, and it, you know, trust Stephen Moffat to give us a character, and in their first episodes they die, but then later on, you know, through the whole timey-wimey stuff, you know, we see River from birth. We see River being a human Time Lord hybrid as well, which, you know, it was crazy that happened. I always seem to forget about that. But speaking of River, you know, you've said that she's one of your favorite characters. What's your favorite River Song moment?
Oh my goodness. Again, there's so many. One moment that I do really like is not the actual reveal of who she is at the end of A Good Man Goes to War, but the moment just before that where she arrives and she kind of puts the doctor in his place a little bit. And there's a whole speech that she gives to him, which I can recite word for word. I'm not going to, but I definitely know it off by heart. But basically, kind of telling him like this is your fault because you make everybody so afraid of you, and
Yeah.
you just take a step back and re-examine who you are. And I like that kind of that she has the closeness to the character to be able to speak to him in that way and for him to listen. But I really enjoy that moment of that episode. But there's so many River Song moments that I love that it would just be too hard to pick just one. But that one is one that definitely sticks in my brain.
Yeah, I remember at the time when it was revealed that not only River was revealed to be Amy and Rory's child, but also the whole, well, I mean, it was a few months later they aired the second part of the series 6, and it was revealed that River could regenerate, which was something that, again, as I previously mentioned, mind blowing. What was your opinion on the whole Time Lord River Song little mini story arc?
I mean, it was interesting when you saw it in A Good Man Goes to War.
Yeah.
Before you knew that it was River, but that melody was a Time Lord.
Yeah.
Then when you find out it's River, it does kind of maybe blur us slightly. I took issue with Mel's in Let's Go Hitler purely because she was introduced as this character who was so important to Amy and Rory, and yet this was the first time we'd ever seen her. And I feel like you could have had her making just brief appearances throughout series 5 and 6, but mostly 6, just to build up the importance of the character a little bit more. But by throwing her in here and just saying, oh, she's been our best friend forever, and it's kind of like, but we've only just met her, I don't believe it. Which I found a little bit kind of like, okay, if you say so. It's a bit of a coincidence, isn't it? But I don't know, I feel like if they'd continued with the regeneration part, it might have got a little bit complicated. Personally, I love the character a lot because of how she's played by Alex Kingston, so I don't think I'd like her to be played by other people. A lot of people say to me, oh, you should play River Song, and I'm like, I don't want to necessarily. If River Song is to be there, she has to be played by Alex Kingston, otherwise to me she's not River Song. So I think I'm kind of glad that they didn't go further with that. As much as I'd like the character to keep showing up, I'd only like her to show up as Alex Kingston, and as a Time Lord that would probably change, and I don't think I'd enjoy that.
No, that's a fair enough observation. The reason why I brought that up is I'm not sure if you're aware, but that is one of the criticisms of Stephen Moffat's era when it came to River, because it was like suddenly brought up that, oh yeah, she's like a human Time Lord hybrid, and then it was briefly touched upon, and then she, in the next episode, gave away all of her regenerations to save the Doctor from being poisoned.
I guess it was a good way to get around the fact that she had to kill the Doctor in some way, but then could save him at the same time. So I guess in that respect, it worked as a driving force for the story. But yeah, I'm kind of glad that it didn't continue in that direction.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel about it, to be honest. Because I also love River myself, and I'm glad that for pretty much all of it we've had Alex Kingston play the role, and I do share the same opinion with you as well, Ellie, that it should only be Alex in the role, and it is good that we didn't end up having like 3 or 4 incarnations of River Song or something like that on screen. But anyway, let's move on, because I've got an interesting conversation to talk about here. Because this year's the 60th anniversary of Doctor Who, if you didn't know.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, it's coming later this year. And I want to talk about your hopes for the 60th anniversary in Series 14, and also a little bit beyond that. Because I imagine with the job that you do, you've probably done a lot of speculation. But is there anything else you'd like to see happen in the specials and beyond?
I mean, the first thing that obviously I say at any point is, as we've just said, River Song. So I'd love to have her return. Yeah. And I feel like actually beyond the fact that it's a character that I love, she is one of those characters that actually would make sense to bring back, as opposed to bringing other characters back and then trying to have to explain how they're there, when actually this is a character who has all of the answers wrapped into one. So I would like to see that. But as we've just said, I'd only like that if it's Alex Kingston. And I do have a worry that if they do bring her back, they may somehow incorporate this regeneration thing in and have her played by someone else. And I'm not about that.
Yeah, fair enough.
But for the 60th and for series 14 and beyond, what I would really like is for the show to go back to the peak that it once was. And when we talk about, you know, series 4 and that kind of time of Doctor Who, I guess maybe the Russell T Davies era, but it used to be so big. And although now we are coming back to having a lot more revealed in terms of trailers and teasers and the marketing, it has in recent years fallen flat in those regards, and a lot of the audience has dropped away. And what I really hope with David Tennant and Catherine Tate returning, with Russell T Davies returning, and with Ncuti Gatwa stepping into the role, what I really hope is that it can go back up again. I mean, for a show that's run for 60 years, of course you're going to have dips. Yeah. And that did happen. You know, we had a good few years where there was no Doctor Who. And I think maybe that break was necessary to revitalize it and bring it back bigger and better than it ever had been.
Yeah.
And I think what's happened now is, again, it was running for quite some time. And maybe a break is what it needed. And I know there wasn't a break, but in terms of a lot of audience disappeared, a lot of interest kind of disappeared. And what I really hope is that it can go back to what it once was and be the Saturday night viewing that it used to be, like the staple of British culture, which I don't feel like it is so much anymore. And that's what I really, really hope for the future.
I think that's something as well that, especially as well, to be honest, throughout the year when it comes to BBC One scheduling in the evening, because you often see a lot of repeats of shows. And I feel like it would be nice to have Doctor Who back on. I think it was in the spring. It used to air during the series 4 days. So it used to be like starting end of March, April time, then finishing in June. I feel like that would be the perfect time to have Doctor Who on. And it's assuming that they stick to the renewed Christmas special schedule. You know, we'd have the Christmas specials, obviously at Christmas, have a little bit of a break. March, late March, early April, we'd have the series premiere. And then obviously there's rumours of spin-offs as well. So that would hopefully fill in the gaps, maybe in the summer or autumn time. And then boom, Christmas special. Because I feel like that's something as well that hasn't helped with the dwindling audience numbers, is the fact that we don't get too much of Doctor Who content per se.
I mean, at the moment it's been quite difficult. We have a lack of content. I know a lot of that maybe came as a result of COVID. And then the kind of gap between switching showrunners and switching doctors and the time that takes, and also the fact that they're trying to be so bold with what they're going forward with. So I can appreciate that. But I mean, what you just said about the spin-offs as well, that's another thing that Doctor Who in its heyday, or the revival anyway, or the revival in its heyday had, you know, you had Torchwood, you had the Sarah Jane Adventures. It was appealing to all different audiences. And so even if Doctor Who was only for a certain, it was for everybody, but you had something that appealed to the parents. You had something that was maybe for the younger kids as well. And that's what I hope, that it can go back to that popularity and be the massive thing that it used to be once again.
Yeah, I mean, I'd certainly never say no to a spin-off, but that was something as well I was meant to ask you earlier when you were on about how Doctor Who had an impact on you when you were younger. Did you ever watch any of the spin-offs when they aired?
I watched the Sarah Jane Adventures. I don't know whether it was when they were airing, but I remember like summer holidays at my grandparents' house watching it on CBBC. Torchwood, I didn't watch it when it aired because I was too young. I remember my mum watching it and seeing, like, coming downstairs and seeing a scene, and it was from the Torchwood episode where Gwen and Reese get married, and she's pregnant with an alien. And I just remember specifically a scene. I don't know why that sticks in my brain, but I just remember walking down the stairs and seeing that on the TV. But I did watch them later on. But when it first aired, I was too young to watch Torchwood.
Yeah, that was same with me. The only clip I saw before watching it a few years later was the scene where Susie shoots Captain Jack in the head, and I just always had that stuck in my head because I think that was up until then that was like the most violent thing I'd seen on TV, and I was completely like I don't know, just shocked. I don't know. I was like, blimey, is this show meant to be related to Doctor Who? And then obviously, yeah, years later I knew how spin-offs work and all that. But yeah, it was certainly a little bit of a surprise for younger Jack for sure. But yeah, let's talk about something a little bit more interesting. Debate time.
Right.
So, just to fill the audience in. So, for this debate question, obviously the audience will be voting later on. They'll be marking your response out of 10. And then after the end of this season of the podcast, you could be in the chance for winning a £50 Amazon voucher. So, but before we get ahead of ourselves, let me give you your debate question.
Okay.
Should the Daleks be given a break before/after Series 14 airs, or should they be allowed to continue and exterminate every season?
Interesting. I think, personally, the Daleks are as synonymous with Doctor Who as the TARDIS and the Doctor themselves. So I don't necessarily think that they should be forgotten about for any period of time completely.
Yeah.
I know there's that kind of, I don't know whether it's a complete truth or whether it's a kind of an urban myth that at some point the Daleks are like, it's contracted that they have to be included at least once every season in some capacity. I don't know if that's actually true or whether it's a myth, but I do agree they need to be there. They're part of Doctor Who. What I will say is I feel like they need to maybe approach them from a different angle, try and explore them in a different way. Something that I would like to see, which maybe it's been done before in the classic series, but I doubt it. I think an interesting episode concept would be to see the world of Doctor Who through the eyes of the Daleks. You always see the Daleks as they're the villains and the Doctor is the hero, but how interesting would it be to have an episode seen from the perspective of a Dalek, where to them they've always been told that the Doctor is the enemy? And how different would it be if you watch it from the perspective of, you know, if you think about, I mean, it's not a very good example, but if you think about the war, the Second World War, for example, I always wonder, are kids in school in Germany taught a different perspective of the war than we are?
Yeah.
You know, because to them, they were the in the right and we were in the wrong. Do you know what I mean? So I feel like a story about the Daleks, but seeing it from the Daleks' point of view, where they're told that this is this really bad person, and how interesting would it be to see, would you see the Daleks in a different light if you understood why they think that they're in the right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And to be honest, I feel like that's a good spin-off pitch, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because
I mean, the Daleks don't have too much emotion about them, so I don't know how interesting it would be to explore it for too long a period of time.
Yeah.
But definitely from, you know, you got a little glimpse of, I like it when the Dalek stories are taken in a different direction than just let's exterminate everyone. So if you think about the episode Dalek, you see a vulnerable Dalek, or the episode Asylum of the Daleks, where you see all the kind of the broken ones that are sent away. And almost if you think about Clara inside the Dalek, that's the kind of idea I have of seeing an episode with some sort of personification of a Dalek.
Yeah.
And how they've been brought up to fear the Doctor. I don't know if I'm explaining this very well.
No, you are. And I feel like that could also as well explore the relationship between the Daleks and Davros, because throughout the show's history, since Davros was introduced, we've only seen Davros, you know, we saw him create the Daleks, but throughout them, we've just seen them, like the Daleks constantly end up betraying Davros or treating him poorly. But it would be nice with the example that you've shown, you know, exploring why the Daleks hate the Doctor and, you know, what's their beliefs on that. I think it would be interesting to explore, I guess, the father and child dynamic a little bit more as well.
Yeah, and kind of witness them kind of learn that everything they've been taught is wrong, and have almost like an existential crisis of everything I know is not right, and everything I've been taught is twisted and backwards, and we're the bad guys
Yeah.
here, actually. And just kind of the idea to explore a Dalek develop a conscience. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
that's my answer.
I'll be honest, I'm sold, but obviously I'm not the deciding vote. So audience members, spam the comments. Do you think Ellie has made a good point about the Daleks staying for a little bit longer, but also exploring them in a new light? Let us know in the comments below. And Ellie, you could be in a chance for winning a £50 Amazon voucher. Think of all the River Song merch you could get with that.
Yeah.
All right, so we did briefly touch upon this earlier, but do you have any more wishes for Doctor Who's future? Because obviously, we've got the House of Mouse, Disney getting involved. Do you have any hopes or any worries or anything regarding Doctor Who's future?
I guess if you've got the Disney input, I worry that it might become too Marvel-esque. Do you know what I mean? I feel like Doctor Who is as successful as it is because it's so niche.
Yeah.
And while it's brilliant for it to expand to a wider audience, and get a bigger budget and all those things, I don't want it to become too grand. I think part of what makes Doctor Who so brilliant is, the low budget kind of effects, and while it is great to see brilliant CGI things, and actually I think sometimes the better parts of Doctor Who are when you don't put too much, I wouldn't say effort into it, but I think this is a discussion we've had before on WhoCulture, is the newer stuff has been heavily reliant on green screen and CGI. And while it's impressive to see, I think physical stunts and physical effects and sets and costumes and all those things are part of what make Doctor Who what it is. So I don't want, with this bigger budget, for them to go too far away from what makes Doctor Who what it is.
Yeah, I mean, that's completely fair, because as well, with Disney coming into Doctor Who, they're bringing a big budget for the show, so it may be tempting for the BBC or Russell to throw all that money and kind of do, like, the big grand visuals that you see in the Marvel films and all the big budget Hollywood blockbusters. But yeah, Doctor Who is known for its running down corridors, being chased by the monster of the week. And that's how the show survived for 60 years in some shape or form. My worry, which I want to hear your opinion on this, is the oversaturation of spin-offs that could happen, because there's been talk of this for a while now, of a Doctor Who cinematic universe, sort of similar to what Marvel has done. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I have seen this, and I think, is it at the Bad Wolf Studios? It has Home of the Whoniverse now on the wall. So, I mean, I think to an extent it's good, in as much as, when you think, like I said earlier, when you think about when Torchwood and the Sarah Jane Adventures were part of that universe, it worked really well, and it gave the chance to expand in different directions and grip new audiences of different ages. So in that regard, I think it's great, and I hope that if they do introduce new spin-offs, that they follow in that same suit. I don't want it to become too grand. Like I said, what makes Doctor Who so special is how niche it is. So I don't want them to expand too far. But I mean, I think spin-offs are good. They also help fill that gap. If they time it right, you can have spin-offs airing when Doctor Who isn't airing. Which I think would be great. I just think they need to find the balance. I think what they need to do is go back and see what worked well when it worked before, and what didn't work when they tried again, because Class fell massively flat. So I think what they need to do to make sure that they succeed in the future is go back and see what worked and what didn't work in the past.
Yeah, I feel like that's important as well. And even with Marvel now, there's criticisms about how quickly they've been pushing out content, and
it's kind of quantity over quality at this point.
Yeah, and I did read the other day that Marvel have taken the feedback into account, and they've now spread out the release schedule for, well, at least the Disney Plus shows anyway. I'm not too sure about what they're doing with the films, but that's the thing. Even before Marvel got that criticism, DC tried to replicate the exact same success that Marvel did. And again, that didn't work in their favor too much.
Yeah, I think what the only thing that I worry about and what I hope they don't do is what's happened with Marvel in particular is now it's got to the point where they've got so many platforms, they've got films, they've got TV series, but if you miss even one of those, the next thing you watch doesn't make sense to some degree because you haven't seen something else. So what I would not like them to do is introduce spin-offs whereby things happen that then affect the main show, and then if you haven't seen the spin-off, things don't make sense. Throwaway lines here and there, hints or references that can go over your head and not matter, or you can understand are brilliant.
Yeah.
But I don't want it to become too reliant on, if you haven't seen this, then this won't make sense. I like them to be individual and just have that little bit of connection to the main thing.
Yeah, I feel like, yeah, especially with a show with Doctor Who, that's important because Doctor Who survived on, references and, I guess doing a little bit of nostalgia here and there. Whereas if it went into something so continuity heavy, a show like Doctor Who, it would be tripping over itself all the time. I mean, there's been countless times where Doctor Who's kind of rewritten itself and, kind of, I guess Doctor Who canon, if you'd even say it's a thing, it's just kind of like a playground of ideas. And if you start tightening it all together, you'll start noticing the cracks. And it's just not worth it. Doctor Who, as you said, it's always been its own niche thing. And if you just try and take it too seriously, it would, just for me personally, I don't think it would work.
Mm-mm. Yeah, definitely.
But okay. So thank you for answering that question. We shall move now on to the audience questions because you have received a fair bit of questions from the audience.
Dear.
So let's go through these. If my phone is going to cooperate, that would be amazing. Okay, here we go. Audience questions, drum roll. Okay, so the first question is, hi Ellie, if you were a Doctor Who companion, what would you bring to the role?
What would I bring to the role? Oh, that's throw me in the deep end, why don't you? That's very interesting. I'd like to think that I would not be the one just screaming and hiding the whole time. I think this is the thing with companions is you've got to find a balance between having the guts to be there in the first place and also being completely terrified of these unexpected things that you suddenly find yourself facing.
Yeah.
I don't like it when they get too sassy.
Yeah.
Or too above themselves. I mean, at the end of the day, the Doctor does this all day, every day, and they know what they're doing. And I don't like it when the companion feels the need to, act as if it doesn't faze them in a way. So I guess what I would bring to it is a good balance of wonder at the new things that we're seeing, but also kind of staying humble to the fact that I am so lucky to be witnessing this, and also I'm still human, in which case these things are going to scare me at times, and I'm not going to hide away from that.
Yeah, I think a realistic interpretation of a human going to the stars on a trip of a lifetime, you are going to be frightened pretty much every single trip because there's countless universes, planets, so many different monsters. You probably aren't going to get used to it for a while. And I guess doing like a modern interpretation of a companion, something realistic, I feel like acts as well as a good audience surrogate as well.
Yeah, I think when they start to become too confident and overpowering, they stop being that connection for the audience, which I think is important because everything else in Doctor Who is so otherworldly and kind of unrelatable to a degree that you really need that grounding force to help yourself imagine yourself in that situation.
Yeah, exactly. It's part of the magic of the show. It keeps it relatable, which again will, make certain companions favorites for certain audience members and stuff like that, which works really well. Okay, next question. Okay, so what anniversary special is your favorite?
See, this is going to be quite easy considering I'd said I hadn't seen a lot of classic Who, so but I would say the 50th actually, and I just remember the hype of it at the time. It was in the cinema. There was so much build up to it. You had David Tennant returning for the first time, even though he's
Yeah.
returning again. I just think it was a real just coming together spectacle, and it was really exciting and fun, and it brought all the elements to the show. You got glimpses of all the Doctors in there. I really enjoyed it, but I'm also very excited for the 60th. So
No, again, I'd probably say the 50th as well. Again, I remember the whole marketing buzz. I remember the glitches during the BBC idents as well. And then I remember after the 50th aired, I remember seeing the cinema introductions on YouTube, which I was so gutted that I didn't go to. But at the same time, I know when a new episode of Doctor Who's on, I just want to be engrossed in it, especially as being a Doctor Who content creator as well. I just want to be focused on every bit of detail. So, especially with an anniversary special, I just wanted to be engrossed and as well not be screaming in the cinema when Tom Baker showed up because, mind you, I can imagine there probably was a few screams here and there.
no, I mean, I didn't watch it in the cinema either. I think, as I said before, for me, watching Doctor Who was like a real family thing. So
Yeah,
we all gathered together and watched it, and it was something that my whole family watched, even though they'd kind of lost interest a little bit. But something like that, where David Tennant's returning, and it's such a big spectacle that we all sat down to watch it as a family,
yeah.
which I think is part of the viewing experience, at least for me personally.
No, again, as we spoke about earlier, that's one of the niche things about Doctor Who. It's become such a part of British culture and broadcasting schedules. It's always lovely, especially for an anniversary special. They're bringing back older cast members, and Day of the Doctor certainly did tick the boxes there as well, especially with the cinema releases. So, another question. What is your favorite bit of merchandise that you own and also love the videos?
Oh, thank you very much. My favorite bit of merchandise that I own, I have a River Song journal diary.
Okay.
I you know what? I had it up here earlier. I don't have it with me anymore, so I can't show you. But it's handmade. I think I got it off of Etsy a long time ago now. But rather than being one of those kind of the ones from the official BBC merchandising, which kind of look a bit too new and fresh for what the diary's supposed to be, it was handmade by someone who'd put love and care into it. All the pages were like stained, and yeah, I love it. I started writing my own pieces of writing in it as well, so that's my favorite Doctor Who merchandise that I own.
No, that's fair enough. I mean, I'm not too surprised because you've spoken about your love for the character. I've got to say mine. I mean, it is recent, but it is like gold dust at the moment. It's the 14th Doctor
Oh, you got
screwdriver.
one.
Yeah, I
You couldn't
mean,
get one in time.
they sold out within
I
I think it was
know.
8 hours, and I was kind of surprised. But then again, I feel like Doctor Who fans, when it comes to new merchandise, they can be very hungry for it.
Well, this is the thing. We were talking about the Disney budget. I think my worry, obviously, being that they're going to go too far in terms of effects and things. But so far, it's all worked out for the better in terms of it looks like a lot of that budgeting is going on the marketing. And I think that's the right direction to take the budget to get people really excited and pumped about it, especially considering the marketing has kind of fallen flat more recently. And it's definitely doing something because hype for Doctor Who is at a high that it hasn't been at for quite some time.
Yeah, yeah, certainly, and I'm hoping that alongside the 60 specials, I'm probably not on my own for this, but I want to get a Beat the Meep action figure. Like, honestly, I really hope that Beat the Meep
A
gets some
little
merch.
teddy bear, Beep the Meep teddy bear,
Honestly, I would buy that.
like a
Anything,
Furby.
literally anything would Beat the Meep. I'm sold. I mean, I literally knew nothing about the character beforehand, but seeing little
I
glimpses.
can't work out whether I find Beep the Meep really cute or really scary. I'm
Yeah,
undecided.
yeah, and that's the thing. I think that's part of the characterization is that Beat does certainly have a little bit of a character twist during the original Star Beast comic, which will be interesting to see on screen.
We'll
But
find out, I guess.
oh yeah, we certainly will. Okay, so another question. Who is your favorite character who's not the Doctor or River Song?
Oh, well, that's just mean. I think I would say Donna.
Donna.
Donna is, I really, like I said earlier, I really enjoyed series 4 and the relationship between the Doctor and Donna. I think before then it started to get a little bit too much about a love story. You know, had the love story of Rose and the Doctor, and then you had the unrequited love story of Martha and the
Yeah.
Doctor. And I found it really refreshing to have a companion Doctor relationship that wasn't about romance or love. It was just this really genuine friendship with banter and humor, and there were touching deep moments, but it was never about getting together. And I think that for me worked better than the companions with the puppy dog eyes following him around.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly does. And as well, Catherine Tate, she's always known how to make every scene that she's in, like she knows how to, make her presence known. And I feel like that's really worked well with Donna, even in the sadder moments. She always has such like a
I think
powerful
her role
portrayal.
in Doctor Who really highlighted that she's more than just a comedian.
Yeah,
It really showcased her talents as a serious actress as well as a comedian. And yes, there
yes.
were hilarious moments, but there were also really touching, heartbreaking moments for her character that she played really, really well. I think yeah, people expected her to only play the funny moments, and she proved them wrong.
Especially in like episodes like the Fire of Pompeii
Yeah.
and the
Planet
Planet
of
of
the
the Ood.
Ood, yeah.
Yeah, this, and obviously Journey's End. You know, there were a lot of like moments where you just really felt for Donna because her character. She went from like a nobody with not a lot going for her to suddenly going on a trip of a lifetime and then suddenly being brought down to earth and she doesn't remember anything of it. And I feel like, as you mentioned earlier about how you'd play a companion, I feel like that's the most realistic way.
Yeah. I was just thinking that she was that character who, I'm nothing special. I'm just a normal, ordinary person. And I feel like that's who the best companions should be.
Yeah,
Someone who appreciates the fact that they are just one person in this grand universe and they are lucky enough to be experiencing these wondrous things in the world.
yeah, certainly. And hopefully, I mean, we've got a new companion coming down later this year, I believe, in the Christmas special. We've got Millie Gibson playing Ruby Sunday, and we still don't know how her companion will compare with Shooty's Doctor, but I am looking forward to that dynamic. And from what I've seen from filming stuff, I am really looking forward to seeing them two on
Mhm.
screen. But anyway, we've got some more questions to get
Okay.
on to. So, question for the podcast: if me or you could make a big Hooniverse project that the BBC has greenlighted to be made, what would it be, and what fresh concepts would you bring to it?
I feel like my answer is quite obvious. I would like a River Song spin-off.
Yep.
Um, not just because I love the character, but because it's the character that makes the most sense.
Yeah.
You can have a River Song spin-off. I mean, already Big Finish have done the Diary of River Song. And
Mhm.
while I really appreciate that Big Finish are in a position where, because it's audio only, it means she can meet past incarnations of the Doctor that you wouldn't be able to do on screen
Yeah.
because that they're older. You'd have to explain that somehow, and so she can have all these adventures. But for a spin-off of her own on TV, you don't necessarily have to have her with the Doctors, but through her entire diary that she's got all these adventures that she's been on. And so I feel like, similar to Captain Jack, who has the ability to travel to all these places as well, you could see her when she's not with the Doctor. What does she do when she's on her own? And who does she meet? And it also gives you the chance to bring other characters in as well. She can meet previous companions, can pop along, and it makes sense for her to meet them.
Yeah.
Whereas other spin-offs, you probably have to do a lot of explaining to understand why they're there or how they're there. Whereas you've got the perfect concept right there, and I just don't understand why they haven't done that.
Yeah, again, a very solid pitch. And I feel like there's an opportunity to do like a little bit of a format change. Maybe you could do like an anthology format. So each episode, there's no real continuity, but each episode could be set on like a certain page of the diary. So I don't know, one episode you could have River meeting Missy and going on an adventure with or fighting against Missy. I don't know what the dynamic would be there. It'd be very interesting to explore.
It
And then
was
the next,
explored in Big Finish very briefly. I think it was kind of a bit of both. It was a kind of, can I trust you? Oh no, I can't trust you. Oh no, I can
oh
trust
yeah,
you. Um,
I remember that box set because she met other incarnations of the Master as well. I think one of them was there was the Crispy Master, and then the War Master as well. I think
I
from
don't know, I
what I
can't remember,
remember.
but
But yeah, I feel like that would be something cool to see. And then like the next episode, completely unrelated, you've got River just I don't know chilling on the Powell estate with Jackie Tyler or something like that, going
yeah.
against the Celestial Toymaker. Just a random episode idea there, but yeah, it would be something to explore, especially with an anthology format. Doctor Who hasn't really done that, so it'll be interesting to see that for sure. But the next question. So, you were previously an aspiring actress. Other than River Song, what existing character would you want to play? And if you could write an episode of the show, what would it be about?
An existing character, is that an existing Doctor Who character or just a character in general?
Well, I said existing character would you want to? I'm guessing because they said other than River Song.
As an
I
actress, I'm just going to assume any character anywhere. I don't know.
yeah.
Well, I tell you what, I has been said to me quite recently. I've been watching a lot of Star Trek, a lot for Trek culture, and a lot of people have said to me recently, "You need to play a young Captain Janeway." And I mean, I'm totally on board for it. Apart from the fact that I can make myself look like her, but as soon as I open my mouth, I sound nothing like her. But that is definitely something that, given the opportunity, would be brilliant to play. What was the second part of the question? Oh, well, if I could write an episode.
Yeah.
If I could write an episode. Oh, that's very difficult. I feel like my Dalek idea was the best idea I've had all day. The whole. Actually, I tell you what I would love to see. Like, beyond obviously issues with, I know there are some issues around this person, but what I would love to see is for the Doctor to meet Walt Disney.
Okay, so like a
I
little historical
Yeah,
episode.
I don't know. I think obviously as someone who created, I mean, Disney's a massive company. I mean, it's a worldwide. It's massive, and so I just feel like for the Doctor to meet, or for the companion, most importantly, to meet Walt Disney when he's creating Mickey Mouse or
Yeah.
something. I don't know. And now that Disney Plus have kind of involved themselves with Doctor Who, it feels like you then won't have the issues of copyright anymore. So whereas before you wouldn't maybe be able to do that for crossing franchises, Disney now are involved with Doctor Who, so it would be more feasible.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I'm just waiting for the next Simpsons short that has the Doctor showing up, maybe. Who knows? I mean, the Doctor has sort of shown up in The Simpsons before, so who knows? Who knows? Okay. Right. I think we've got time for one more question. So, with David Tennant coming back,
Mm-hmm.
does this bring a nostalgic experience for you, and does it take you back to the years 2008/2009?
Absolutely. As I've said throughout this whole thing, I'm hoping that these new seasons or series will take it back to the peak that it once was at. And I think maybe for me, that is kind of trying to feel that nostalgia that I once had. And I do feel like, especially seeing the trailers for the 60th and seeing those characters returning, that I am getting a lot of nostalgia from it. I mean, I want the show to progress and move forward and continue for a long time. But I don't think there's anything wrong with going back to the things that made it so great as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely feel a lot of nostalgia. But I also agree that maybe once you've had that bout of nostalgia with the three specials, moving on to someone new and not focusing too much for too long on the past and taking it forward, but keeping those elements that made it great then and will hopefully make it great again.
Yeah, certainly. And that is a very good answer to that. And that's kind of how I feel as well about the whole nostalgia thing. Especially as well being in other fandoms. I've seen Marvel do it with the recent Spider-Man film. We had Toby and Andrew back. which was a nice reward for fans, especially after not seeing those iterations of the character for so long. But again, it's about keeping the balance whilst also bringing back previous elements, just as we saw with Day of the Doctor. You know, we had David Tennant back, we had a lot of references to the past of the show, but also looking towards the future, which obviously it does seem like the 60th is doing anyway, because Shooty is also in whatever capacity in those specials, which will be interesting and certainly something which, I certainly look forward to seeing. But anyway, I feel like it is time to wrap up this episode. So thank you so much, Ellie, for coming on.
My pleasure.
It has been a ride. You know, we've been talking about spin-offs, we've been talking about, you know, your WhoCulture history, and, you know, it has been amazing. So thank you so much. And I hope that, you have a lovely day. And audience members, thank you so much for dropping in questions, and let us know in the comments, what do you think about Ellie's debate about the Daleks? And I will see you all next time. Thank you so much for tuning in, and goodbye for now.